Ciao, everyone, and welcome back to Experience Italy with Friends. Today's episode is all about Italy's calcio culture, also known as football or soccer, depending on where you are from. Calcio is the most popular sport in the world, and that also holds true in Italy with over 1.4 million registered players and over 14,000 teams. But calcio is more than a sport in Italy. It's almost a religion, or a cult depending on who you ask. In this episode, we will touch on the origins of this sport, discuss some of Italy's original players, and we have some guests joining us to share what calcio means to them and their lives. So lace up your shoes and let's get started. Andiamo! Experience Italy with Friends is a travel and lifestyle podcast where we will explore our favorite destinations and hidden gems, share key travel tips and cultural insights, and provide real-time updates about our move to this remarkable country. Join me, Tanya Razzo, an Italian travel expert and founder of Amici Vacations, and my Italian husband and producer, Davide Razzo, on a journey that is sure to inspire you and prepare you to create immersive and authentic experiences of your own. Hello again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for yet another episode. I'm your host, Tanya, and I'm here with my husband, co-host, and producer, Davide.
Ciao, amici.
Today's episode is all about calcio, which again is Italian for football or soccer. As you're going to learn here soon, Davide is obsessed with calcio. For those Ted Lasso fans, football is life. And Davide couldn't agree more.
Calcio is life.
Well, the soccer season in Italy just ended, so we thought it was a good time to talk about this important cultural aspect of Italian life. And I was happy for Davide to take the lead on this episode.
I was glad to take over, Tanya, and I hope that our audience likes this topic.
I'm sure they will.
But before we dig into our episode today, as usual, we provide you with an update of our lives in Montepulciano. Or so we thought, because you were not here, Tanya. Where were you?
Well, I made a last-minute quick whirlwind visit to the U.S. I started in Denver and then flew to Minneapolis, all in the course of a week. And it was fabulous. First, I was in Denver and I loved visiting with our son and my sister and her family in Denver. We did a little bit of hiking and I loved having some Mexican and Asian food. Geez, do I miss international food here. And even more fun is that I was able to meet up with our friends, Mike and Debbie, as they were driving through Colorado on their way to Minnesota. And they say they are loyal listeners to our podcast, especially when they are on the road. So a big shout out to them. Maybe they'll be hearing us.
Hi, Mike and Debbie.
So after Denver, I flew to Minneapolis just in time to welcome our daughter back to the States. She's been studying here in Florence for a semester, so I was there to help her get resettled and back to school for the summer. And, gave me a great excuse to be there. I enjoyed visiting with my parents and our friends. And, it's just never enough time to fit everybody in. But it was a nice visit, was able to take care of some personal business, and I was thrilled to go to Target and stock up on some things, and don't I miss my Target.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks for that too.
Well, I made it back in Italy in time then to meet up with a couple of different clients here over the weekend in Montepulciano, and now we're kind of back into the groove and we're recording an episode.
Thanks, Tanya, and welcome back home. While you were in the US, I was here in Montepulciano and watched the ending of the Calcio season of Serie A, where 2 teams fought for the championship, 6 teams for European Cup placements, and another 4 were fighting against relegation.
Wow. I'm glad I was not here to see it all and see you shouting at the TV screen, I'm sure.
I was not shouting at the TV, so.
I am sure you are. Well, as you can tell, Davide loves calcio. And, Davide, when we met 27 years ago in Switzerland, you weren't playing calcio at the time, so I never had a chance to watch you play at all. Then, when we had kids, you introduced them to soccer, but sadly, they didn't love it like you had hoped they would. So, I'd like to hear from you about how you started playing calcio and what meaning it had for you when you were growing up and what it means for you now.
Well, let me start off by saying that I grew up in Rheinach, which is a small suburb of Basel in Switzerland. And I lived in a neighborhood full of non Swiss people like Italians, Spaniards, Turks. Italians were overwhelmingly the majority in that neighborhood. And there was a huge playground there. And that's where I probably kicked my first ball. I must have been, I don't know, 5 or 6 or so. Some of the kids, which I'm still friends to this day, they were older than me. I must have been one of the younger ones there, as the games we organized were always mixed in ages. That's where I started to take interest in the sport. Later, when I was 7, my parents let me join the football club Rheinach. My parents had barely money to buy me the boots or practice outfits, and the meaning of culture to me came more present when I actually saw the pros on TV.
So, how did you learn about the club or knew that is where you wanted to play?
Well, the older kids in the neighborhood already played in the club, and they encouraged me to go see them play their games on a Saturday. Once I saw them play, all in the same kit and having a coach yelling at them from the sidelines, I was hooked. So I joined the club as well.
So, how was your first experience practicing, and do you remember your first game?
Well, when I first started, I hated practice. The coach was always making us run around the pitch, and we practiced technique and drills and so on. But I wanted to play games, which came always at the end of practice for like maybe 20 minutes or so. My first game, I can barely remember, but I know I was put in as a defender on the right side because my strong leg was the right one.
So you loved playing right away, but how long did you play? I mean, how many years?
I played for 15 years, but not always as a defender as I started out and not always in Rheinach. The big club in the region was the great FC Basel, who just recently won the Swiss League again after 7 years, and is the biggest club in Switzerland. In Rheinach, in the meantime, I switched roles as the coaches discovered that I had a talent in goalkeeping, so they put me in there. I liked it, but I think it grew on me more than anything. Then my brother switched to the great FC Basel when he was 15 years old and told me that they were looking for a goalkeeper in the youth team under 15. So I switched as well. After passing an audition, I got almost overrun by the coach as he promised me that I would be playing in the highest category for under 15 teams playing nationally versus regionally. So I switched clubs, which in Rheinach they saw it as a betrayal.
Excuse me? What? A betrayal?
Yeah, I know people in the US might not understand this, but soccer is huge and there are big rivalries, such as probably found in the NFL. I can think of the Vikings versus the Packers or Packers against the Bears. So when someone switched clubs, it was a big deal. Also because I, in quotes, I was signed to Rheinach for years. I was a member of the club, so I belonged to them. You couldn't just tell them, hey, I'm done playing with you guys. I want to join the big FC Basel. So Rheinach had to sign off on the deal, on the transfer. I remember going with the new coach to the president's house to get the required signature to release me. And my new coach was getting a big earphone from the president, you know.
Are you serious?
Yes.
I mean, you were 15.
I know. They're very serious about it. And I guess Basel was taking a lot of the talent from the suburbs to bring them in the city to play. And that's what was happening. So they gave in. And then, just to give you an idea of the significance of this, I was not welcomed anymore at any games in Rheinach or near the training facilities to watch my old teammates or friends. That changed when I went back to Rheinach after 6 years playing for the FC Basel on high levels. And they released me when I did not get a contract as a pro. So instead of playing the amateur teams in Basel, which, you know, it was a big humiliation, because it was seen as, hey, those are the guys that never made it. I went back to play with my old teammates in Rheinach.
Wow. So that's a lot of years of soccer, and you went back and forth to teams. So you were welcomed back. And then why did you ultimately quit?
Well, I was burned out. I was so upset that I did not end up playing pro, which is very difficult. I watched my old teammates, playing pro and even playing for the Swiss national team. So I said, I'm done. I'm done with soccer, and I picked up a new sport, cycling.
Okay, so growing up in an Italian household, calcio was a big thing. In Italy or in Europe in general, people are rooting for the big teams. Which teams did you root for when you were a kid, and do you still root for those teams?
Okay, Tanya, now we're touching into a very sensitive topic. Rooting for a team in Italy, or for the matter of fact, even in Switzerland, it has a different meaning than rooting for a team in the NFL, NBA, MLB, or even the new MLS, the Major League of Soccer. As you mentioned earlier, introducing this podcast, it's almost joining a religion or a cult. When you root for a team, you show this proudly to anyone, also beyond the games. And when someone offended your team, you defended it with pride. You can see that on games and TV when the tifosi, that's what the fans are called in Italy, sing their teams to victory. Or you don't see this kind of behavior in American sports. I haven't seen it. But let me say that my first team I started to root for was the big FC Basel. But because I grew up in an Italian household, culture was part of our lives too, especially on Sundays when the big teams in Italy played for the championship. My older brother was already rooting for Juventus Turin. My dad wasn't rooting for any specific teams other than his native US Catanzaro that was playing in the highest class at that time. I picked Juventus Turin as well because as a kid, I liked their goalie. Me being a goalie, I liked their goalie Dino Zoff. And I really liked the black and white kids.
Sounds like very important reasons.
Yes.
So I know you will talk a lot more about this with your Italian friends from the US, but can you give a small introduction about how this sport came to be? Some people say even that this sport was invented in Italy.
Okay, so when I did some research on this, I was a little bit surprised because I thought that, we know that the modern football, I should switch it to football now, was actually founded in England. That's why we call it football there. And it was founded in 1848. Then it spread first in Europe and then in South America. But did you know that the first form of football was actually practiced in China? It was in a competitive game called Calcio. And it was sort of a football or a kickball as a mix of basketball and volleyball. So then, of course, the Greeks invented some sort of a football game. They call it a fainida or the episkoros. And also the Romans practiced it, called the harpastum. But also, why I said that it was invented in Italy, or many claim that it was invented in Italy, is because of the Calcio Storico Fiorentino, or also known as the Calcio Storico, Calcio in Livrea, or Calcio in Costume. Calcio Fiorentino is a form of football that originated in the Middle Ages, and it was practiced in Piazza Santa Croce in Florence. And it became as known as the Gioco del Calcio Fiorentino, or simply Calcio. So what they did, though, it's funny because the game starts with, fighting. They use mixed martial arts, punching, kicking, or tripping, hacking, tackling, even wrestling. And they do that until they, tire the opponents, and mostly it goes into an all-out brawl. So they try to pin and force many players into be knocked out. And then once there are many incapacitated players, the other team just swoops the ball and heads to the goal. Anyway, this interest in this form of calcio waned away in the early 17th century, but in 1930, it was reorganized as a game in the Kingdom of Italy under Benito Mussolini. Then, so like I said before, the birth of the modern era began in England in 1848 when the University of Cambridge put the first rules in football. And, in England at that time, the game was only played at universities. Further on, it became so popular that in 1863 in England, they founded the first national association in football, the FA, Football Association. Right after it started to spread in the United Kingdom, like in Scotland or Wales and Ireland, it spread in the continental Europe, then South America, Asia, and then the rest of the world. Today, football or calcio is the most popular sport in the world, attracting over 3.5 billion fans. And as of 2006, there were over 280 million people playing or being part of it as a referee or other staff members. And today, I'm sure it's bigger.
Okay, wow, Davide, that is quite a history overview. I had no idea the sport went through so many evolutions. But now we're in the modern age. Can you briefly explain what football is and why it's so popular for people like me who have never played the sport?
Sure. Football is played on a field, also called pitch, and the size of it's approximately the size of an NFL field. Two teams play against each other, 11 versus 11, and only with their feet they are trying to bring the football beyond the line of a goal. The goal is built by 2 posts and a crossbar the size of 7 meters by 2.4 meters. The team who scores more within the 90 minutes the game is played wins. Unlike the American football, where hands are used to move the ball, in football you can only use your feet to move the ball. The only player that can use their hands to move the ball is the goalie, and he can only do it in a designated goal area by the goal. Now, you ask, why is this so popular? I do believe it is because you need skills to kick a ball, but the game can be played everywhere. So it's either on designated fields, or on the beach, or even on the streets, as it's been done for centuries.
Okay, but since we're talking about calcio, what makes calcio so special? Why do we talk about it on our podcast?
Well, we are talking about culture because it's in the Italian culture and DNA. We will talk extensively about it with our guests in a minute, but culture is very traditional here in Italy. Teams that exist for over 100 years, Tanya, multiple teams in certain cities like Milan, Rome, or Turin. There are 3 professional categories or leagues. The Serie A is the top, Serie B is the second one, and then there's also the Serie C. Teams can be relegated or promoted from the leagues depending on the competitive results throughout the season first, and secondary if they meet certain financial criteria, unlike in the US sports where you cannot be relegated. So I think the tourists or the non-Italian that wants to go see a game, it would be great to know a little bit of the sport before going to see a game, because the experience will be very different than in the US or any other country for the matter of fact. I have visited games in Switzerland, Italy, Germany, France, England, and the United States, and it's very different experience everywhere I was.
So you say it's a very different experience here in Italy, but how so? What makes Italy's calcio so very different than football or soccer elsewhere in the world?
Well, I interviewed 3 of my good friends to give you their insight on how they became fans and what calcio means to them. So on the first interview, I want to welcome Andrea Guglielmino and Stefano Follega. And then on the second interview, which will come after that, we welcome back Alfonso Aiello, who we had the pleasure to talk to him on episode 12. So let's just go to the interviews. So, hey, welcome everyone. And thank you for coming on this episode of Experience Italy with Friends. And on this episode, we're going to talk about Calcio. And I just wanted to go around quick, and I want you guys to introduce yourself and then also say for which team you root for.
Well, I'll start. My name is Andrea Guglielmino. I am originally from Florence, but I'm a Juventus fan, the biggest and most important club in Italy, by far, I would say.
Okay, and then who else do we have?
Ciao, my name is Stefano. I'm from Rome, and being from Rome, I'm a Roma fan. And I argue what Andrea said, that it's, I think that Roma is the most important.
There you go. This is what I wanted for this episode, just to explain for people in the US that there's always a rivalry. But I want to know, Stefano, how come you became, because there's two teams in Rome, and how did you become a fan of Roma and not Lazio? That's the other team in Rome.
Well, because I am from Roma. Roma is the city. So if you are in Roma, you should be a Roma fan. Lazio is the region. So the people that lives in the country, that we call Burini, it's, that's pretty much what where the Lazio fan come from.
Okay.
If you just see at the stadium on Sunday, stadium is full every day because the Roma people goes to the stadium. The other team is from outside. They can't make it to the stadium every time.
Okay. Are there no Lazio fans from the city of Rome then?
Yeah, there are, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. How about you, Andrea? You're from Florence.
I'm actually the opposite of what, in a sense of what Stefano just explained, because, everyone hates Juve, right? Like that's something that maybe you can get into it in these podcasts, Davide. But particularly in Florence, the city where I'm from, there is a very strong rivalry with Juventus. So the reason why I'm a Juventus fan is that growing up, I was still pretty new. I wasn't even following soccer or football. Yeah. And there was a player, an Italian player. His name was Roberto Baggio. If you ask me, probably the best Italian player ever. And I just with a 6 years old, 7 years old eyes, I was in love with Roberto Baggio. And he was playing for Fiorentina, which is the team of my city.
Yeah.
But in the summer of 1990, he moved to Turin, to Juventus, which actually resulted in a complete, basically civil unrest in Florence. And but I didn't care. I just followed him to Juventus, and then I stayed once Roberto Baggio left and played for I believe other 4 teams in Italy. So in total, I think he played for 6 different teams. But I stayed at Juventus at that point.
Wow, that's interesting. So we have 2 different ways that how somebody becomes a tifoso from a team. Very typical for Stefano that you grew up in a city and then you're rooting for the team of your city, which I did as well. I mean, I grew up in Basel in Switzerland, so my first team was Basel. So I was rooting for Basel, and then because I was Italian, I picked a team as well from the Italian championship, and it was Juventus as well. So anyway,
Davide, if I may,
yeah,
you had you didn't have much choice about your city in Italy because there's no team down there.
Well, okay, so that's where I'm getting at. I think I talked about it already, but my parents, for example, my dad, he doesn't root for any team. Maybe he roots for the one team in Calabria, which is Catanzaro, which they were in the Serie A back in the 70s and 80s, and then they got relegated. And for years they were now in Serie C, and now they're actually playing for the to be promoted back into the Serie A. So anyway, so you guys live in the US, just for our audience, and that's where we met in Minneapolis. And you guys experienced games in Italy, but you guys went to see the Loons as well, or you went to see the Vikings. So what is the, to explain a little bit to our audience, what's different when you go to a Vikings game or a Loons game versus going to a Roma or a Juventus game? Andrea, you go first.
Well, I mean, this is a pretty interesting question. And, I'm afraid I'm gonna come across to be like snobbier, but I do feel like in Italy, growing up, you get a bit of this like ultras mentality in everything you do in the everyday, at school, talking to your friends. And I feel like the game on Sunday at the stadium is just the realization of a wait for a week for the next game. And so I would say there's much more tension, much more thrilling enthusiasm, but also you're kind of like living and die by what is happening. And I would say I may experience that in the US with US sports during the playoffs a bit more maybe. But in Italy, I feel like every given week, every single game has that sort of like super high tension. Now, one thing that I have to say is that, and I think Stefano can get into that even more than me, being from Florence, obviously, for me, going to the stadium, it's either like going to see like Fiorentina, which is I was a bit less invested, obviously, or going to Turin to see Juve, which is 4 hours, 3-4 hours trip to the stadium. So it's a like full day kind of experience, which I love to do, but it is a bit more complicated, obviously. And so imagine what I was saying, right? Like you get to the stadium, long trip to the stadium, full of like hope and anticipation for a big match, and then you lose. Now on the way back to Florence for those 4 hours sucks quite a lot, and it's late at night and things like that. I have to say that I was lucky enough to have seen like a few major wins against Real Madrid, against Manchester City, and those were like, basically going back. It was always like super fun, but I also had like my share of like bad experiences. So the Loons in particular, I would say, is a very different experience. I enjoy maybe being there a bit more, like a bit more leisure activity, drinking maybe, and chatting with my friends. I'm a bit less into the game, but I would love to hear like from Stefano, since like Rome is definitely one of the best stadium in Italy in terms of like the fans.
Yeah, Stefano, go ahead and explain a little bit more what the difference. Like I'm talking about experiencing the fans. Like how are the fans in the Roma Stadium versus the Allianz Stadium in St. Paul?
Well, we need to go a little bit back. The stadium was invented by the Roman because there was something that the emperor wants the people to have something where they can go and just throw out their stress, their after a week of work or whatever, just go at the stadium and yell and throw out your stress, so that the week that come you kind of more relaxed. So the stadium is a place where historically you go there and you just throw out what you have inside, and this can be interpreted in many ways. So the biggest difference in here is that people goes at the stadium because they want to have a fun day. So they go cheers for the team. There isn't, that kind of a pressure to throw out. And it's, you go there, you get your hot dog, your burger, your beer, sit and chat. And maybe if they score, you are happy, but your rival is right by you, nobody happened. So nothing happened, and it's a completely different vibe. There isn't there is a rivalry, but it's more of a cleaner and correct rivalry. Also, there are some stuff that happen every once in a while, but it's not like in Italy that or Europe generic that unfortunately there are group that goes at the stadium only for the violence, and that's something that has to be corrected. But I like to go to the stadium because I can see my team. I'm concentrated on the team. I see everything. If I go here at the stadium, I am, just looking around. I never been to the Loon because I don't like American soccer. I've been to the Viking. It's I have to say it's fun, but again, if you go there and get your food and chat with your friend, it's completely different vibes.
Yeah, I've seen games. Lucky enough to see games in Italy. I've seen games in Germany. I've seen games in France. I've seen games in England. And, talking about the rivalries, there's always like a rivalry between, as in Italy, for example, Lazio and Roma. Those are rivals. Or in Milan is Inter and AC Milan. Or in Torino, there's Juventus and then there's AC Torino. Those are all rivals, but also like Florence, Fiorentina and Juventus, those are rivals. Or Naples, for example, against any team in the north. Those are rivalries that I believe that the fans can either be nasty or they can also have like a nice choreography in the stadium, singing or display of like flags. Yes, I'm already forgetting English, guys.
Hey, Davide, if I may add, I think Stefano said some super interesting things, and a few things come to mind. Obviously, it made me think about the gladiators and coming from all that time, and it does feel like a very nice analogy. But I do want to mention something. I'm afraid that the listener to your podcast are going to be scared to possibly consider going to see a game in Italy. Obviously, it is such a amazing experience. Again, maybe the takeaway should be that there is nothing like that probably in the US, to be quite honest. And the other thing that I want to say is that one of the things that I think it came through from what Stefano was saying is that there is such a strong ties and deep relationship with your team that is a lot of Italians leave for that, and it's just like really a fuel to go through the week.
Yeah,
and I want to mention something that I think is fun, right? You probably heard about. Puoi cambiare la moglie, puoi cambiare il partito politico, puoi cambiare religione, ma non puoi cambiare la tua squadra del cuore.
So you can change your wife, you can change your politics, you can change your religions, but you never leave your team. And this is exactly what I said before this segment, that Calcio in Italy is like a cult. Being a tifoso is being like living in a cult, and you never leave your cult. Or it's like a religion. So it's like you guys said, you talk to your friends all week long, and like we do in our chat group, by the way, we do that too. And then it's Sunday, and we're all looking forward to the games. And and speaking of that, let's focus on the Serie A, which is the highest league played in Italy. It has 20 teams. 3 of them get relegated. 1 wins the championship, which is called the Scudetto, right? And then the 2nd through the 6th, they will participate in either the Champions League or Conference League or the Europe League. And so now we have 2 rounds left. And as much as we discuss how everything is like they're cheating and, everything is like tight. And so the last 2 games, and that's what I think it makes the Serie A very interesting. And that's what I think that people, when they come to Italy, they should go to a game and just to see for themselves. And what do you guys think? I mean, about the Serie A?
Mario,
Yeah, go ahead.
what do you think about the Serie A? The Serie A is what we look for. We wakes up 5 o'clock in the morning. We wait 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Anytime that there is a game, we wanted to, make sure that we are present. I don't watch other games. I watch Roma game. I rarely watch other game. Just if it's in TV, sometime I just throw it in there. But Serie A is for a tifoso is the essential time. So you want to make time for that.
Stefano, do you watch any other league? I don't.
No.
Really?
I don't care about Premier League, German League, French League. I watch Serie A and I watch European football if my team is playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was watching German league.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
But now, I'm watching my team at the FC Basel and Juventus, and then maybe other Serie A games, but yeah, you're right.
I watch it if there is you guys watching and that we wanted to chat each other and throw us some some stuff.
I guess Stefano cheers for Roma 1 and 2 against Juve. That's something he should have said at the beginning.
Yeah.
Him and everyone else in Italy.
For sure. And also every team that play against you. But
yeah, right.
Maybe maybe not all of it, but
yeah, not Lazio, right? But one thing, David, that I would say is that I think Stefano, yourself, myself too, we grew up with Serie A being what is the Premier League today, being the best team, the best league in the world, with the best players coming to play like in the 90s, etc. I think one interesting fact to share, and one that is also behind like a lot of the conversation about cheating scandals and things like that, is that there are like
it's all documented.
There are major political like interests behind it, and some of the most prominent and richest families in Italy at some point, and one of them still today, where they own one of the teams, right? So the Agnelli with Juventus, Berlusconi with Milan, Moratti family with Inter, Roma itself, Naples, they all had like these very important families. Even Lazio today, right? Like their president is fairly, but is a politician. So there is all these interests behind it that makes it sometimes wonder like what else is going on. But unfortunately, it's not as what it used to be in the 80s and 90s. That said, I think for us, it's just really all that matters. Like, I maybe look at the final standing for the Premier League, but I don't watch it every week.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, I agree with you, Andrea. And just to close this, I think where money is around, even in the Premier League, I'm so convinced that there's so many things going on in that league that are not, going the way it should go. But for me, it's always about the game. And that's what's beautiful. And the rest, it's all politics. So anyway, go ahead.
I want to say, one last thing is just to, because if you growing up watching soccer, Calcio, Serie A, Roma was always the team that was coming second. And that was hard because, growing up, you get those team in the north that they were always the team that was winning.
Mm-hmm.
There always been a reason for it. So team like Roma, Napoli or Fiorentina, or they were always team that they couldn't win because they didn't have they didn't have the investment or they didn't have the weight politically. And so this is something that is a little changing now because nowadays you can see that Napoli is coming back, Bologna or Atalanta.
Fiorentina.
So there are teams that before they never been on the top of the league, on the top of the Serie A. So things are changing.
I see what Stefan is saying. I would say one thing to mention: there is no salary cap, right? And so that is slightly more difficult to create that a level playing field compared to some of the U.S. leagues. It has to be said that similarly to the Yankees, the Dallas Cowboys, the Los Angeles Lakers, there are certain like cities like. Or teams like Juventus, Milan, and Inter, they have such a big following. They have more money, and those families that I mentioned, they're kind of like backing them up. But yeah, sure, it's definitely great to see like smaller places like winning and the passion that comes from that.
Let's leave it at that. I know you guys need to leave. I wanted to thank you guys for coming on, and let's see what's happening tonight.
Thank you, and good luck. Good luck to Roma.
Actually,
they're gonna win their games, the last two games. I'm sure.
My son is at the stadium today. Is the last game in Rome for Roma and for the great coach Claudio Ranieri.
Yep, I'm sure there's gonna be a farewell send off. Yeah, because your son is studying in Rome right now.
Correct.
Yeah. So he should send us some pictures from tonight.
Yeah, I'll try to have him.
Yeah, maybe I can use one to make a post. So
yeah, I'll tell him to send us a nice picture of the ovation they do for Ranieri.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Have a wonderful evening and see you soon.
Ciao, Davide.
Thanks, Davide. Ciao.
Wow, that was a great interview with Andrea and Stefano. Let's go to the interview with Alfonso now. Okay, everyone, I want to welcome back Alfonso Aiello, who was featured in our episode 12 when we were talking about wine. And I invited him back because due to recent events, his city of Naples won the Italian Championship, or how the Italians say, they want the Scudetto. Alfonso, welcome, and please tell me what you feel, where you were when they won the last game.
Well, first of all, good morning, good afternoon. I don't know when you're going to listen to this podcast. I don't know what time of the day is going to be around the world. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. Well, I just got back from New York yesterday morning at 9 o'clock. I get back home. I left for New York on Thursday. The game was on Friday. I was there. My son lives in New Jersey, so Hoboken, right across from New York. So I watched it with the Napoli New York club. Which was really, really fun. We were the president of the club is a friend of mine. He owns a friend of mine, somebody that I know. He owns from my area. He owns a restaurant called Ribalta in New York. It's a famous pizza place. And but unfortunately, his restaurant had a problem with had a fire the week before.
Oh no!
So they transferred us in this pub. It was called the Reservoir, and there were about 300 people. 300 Naples fans in the pub. The pub was packed. It was was once in a lifetime experience. It was really fun, and when we won it 2 years ago, I was in Naples. I had the pleasure to be in Naples with my son and my wife, which was a cool experience for them. But I think this time, I got to say, this time I had more fun because it was more softer, it was more intense. And it was really fun to spend it, with 200 people that had the same faith that I do. So,
yes, and you mentioned it, like faith. I explained it on earlier on the podcast. Calcio in Italy, soccer in Italy, it's like living a cult. It's like living a religion, and for you guys. It's something, it means a lot because you became a Napoli fan because you are from Naples.
Yes.
There was no other team, right? So...
No, we a difference of some friends of ours that were born in Naples and then they chose to root for another team. A lot of Neapolitan people are we call it tifo identitario. It's an identitary, but Naples, it's a long story to explain how like there's a song that the Neapolitan fans sing that's called Sarò con te, and they say, defend the city. So when I talk about Naples, I never brag. I always defend the city. That's my role. It's, I'm not like other friends that they win a couple games and they kind of feel really good about themselves and they tell people that they're the best in the world or, that things only happen in their city. They're unique. I think if there is a city that's unique, it's Naples more than anything else. And I think you could see it on TV on Friday. If people want to learn how to celebrate, I think they should go to Naples when Naples wins the Scudetto because there's nothing like it. It doesn't matter what other people say. When people say you cannot understand, well, I'll tell you, you cannot understand. So. Yes. It's just an experience. You're right. It's I think I was listening to a description of this newscast that was commenting on the Napoli game. He said that the Maradona, it's like a temple, tempio laico. It's like a church, but it's not a Catholic church, but it's a church.
It's a temple. Everybody go.
It doesn't matter how much money you have, if you're poor, if you're rich. In that day, you're all on the same planet, and. It was a week or 4 days or a pin in your stomach where you're thinking it's really going to happen. We're very skeptical. We come from a culture of skepticism, but I think that Napoli soccer team has really changed the culture of Naples and developed a really. I could see in Napoli's really changed with Aurelio De Laurentiis. He's really developed a winning culture. Not everybody's with him, but I am. I think that. He brings clarity. He's very direct. He knows what he wants, and he does it the proper way. He doesn't overspend. He doesn't get threatened by people, and he's done it his own way. Like Frank Sinatra used to sing. He's done it. I did it my way, and he's done it. And you got to give it to the guy two times in 3 years.
Yes, that's great. And before that, if we can go a little bit back, Naples won his. Last Scudetto before they won it 3 years ago, 33 years before
1990,
that.
Yes.
1990. And so, I talked with Andrea and Stefano about it, that the Italian soccer league, the Serie A, used to be the prestige league in Europe. A lot of people from all over the world were coming to play in the Italian league. And I think he was the best player in the whole world. And you mentioned him before with Diego Armando Maradona, the best player in the world, played for your club. Nobody could believe it that he would leave the big Barcelona and transfer to SSC Naples. And I'm gonna say it like that because all the big clubs in Italy, which they are still today, Inter or Milan, Juventus, they did not get Maradona. And Maradona had offers from those clubs, right?
Yes.
But he chose Naples. And tell me, you used to live in Naples when he was playing in Naples?
I played soccer with Maradona 2 times.
Yes.
One time is also on tape. I was like 17 years old, probably 16, 17 years old. I used to work for his agent, his original agent. His name was Luis Alberti, which my friends Emilia and Andrea, they're still alive. They're my friends, both my friends on Facebook. He used to play for Juventus. He played for Napoli. Alberti did. He passed away like last year, and he was his first agent with the Chister Pillar. And I used to work for him in this little pub called La Cueva, which was like 400 feet from my house. And so one day I was in the locker room. I'd already played from 7 to 8, and I was taking a shower. So I took my shirt off. I was ready to take a shower, and all of a sudden, Jose walks in the locker room. He's like, "Do you want to play another game?" And I say, "Yeah." I was 17. I had plenty of energy.
Yeah, of course.
So I walk on the field, and all of a sudden, this car shows up, and this guy comes out of the car. It was Diego Maradona that came in and started playing with us, as a normal guy. I think Maradona chose Naples because Maradona was not attached to money. Maradona loved soccer, and I think he was like the Neapolitan people. He was very similar to them. He wanted to, he wanted to give something back to people. He was about the people. He wasn't about the money or the fame. He was about soccer.
Mm-hmm. Tell me what Maradona meant to the people from Naples, because there's a mural right in Naples.
The only one. What he means still today to the people of Napoli.
Exactly. So, can you explain what he means to you guys?
Oh, he's a monument. He's like he's like a god. He's like there's probably hundreds of thousands of people that are named Diego because of him in Naples. At the time, if you were born a boy, your name was Diego. And still today, people, like if you go to the stadium, people still sing to Maradona. People still, there's still flags that have Maradona on it. It's just, he showed Neapolitan people that they could compete with the big teams. He showed that, he basically brought us in the world that people started noticing what Naples was. And I think that still today, there's a lot of ignorance about Naples. People talk, but they've never been there. They don't know nothing about Naples. I would say Naples right now, and I'm not saying it because I'm from there, it's probably the number 1 city in Italy right now between filming and food and traveling and tourism, bigger than Venice. If Rome probably didn't have the Pope there, they probably would probably be even bigger than Rome. Mm-hmm. But the Naples is changed. It is no longer the city where everybody's like, oh, I don't want to go over there because of this or because of that. People that go over there, they're having a blast. They come back and they tell their friends. There's a different level of energy. And, I repeat what Stefano says all the time, you cannot understand.
Yeah.
So if you don't leave if you don't go there and immerse yourself in the culture, you cannot understand that. It's just hard to explain.
And that's why I think also all the player stars that eventually came to Naples, they did not leave just after a year or two. They stuck around. I mean, the team that they have now, I think there are maybe 2 or 3 players that left from the previous Scudetto team.
Yes, there's 7 out of 11 players are the same players. I mean, people have been there for like 8 years, 9 years, 7 years, 4 years, 5 years.
Yes. So
even if with the soccer, I think the president is changing a little bit of his philosophy right now because he's starting to realize that you can't be keeping players if they don't want to stay. You just have to sell them.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. But that's what actually makes a team, and you can only win when you have a team. So Alfonso, thank you so much. I think you gave an insight, a big insight, what soccer means in Naples. And I wanted you on this episode because it is very different than what's going on in Rome, what's going on in Firenze, for example, or in Milan with the 2 teams, or in Turin with the 2 teams. It is just soccer. And may I add, Napoli is the only team from the south of Italy right now that is competing. The rest it's not even in the Serie A.
Just to add one more thing, Conte is the first coach from the South that won with a team from the South.
Exactly.
So that's another thing that was added this year. The guy from the South that wins in the South is huge. It's a big. Again, it shows people that it can be done. And people said he was lucky. And he was this, and Inter is the one that threw it away. Well, you know what? Napoli was in the lead for 23 games, 23 days, not only once.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's consistency, it's believing. So it's just, I don't really get it that there's always, every time that Naples wins something, there's always somebody that give it up. There's never that deserved it because they were the best team. It's always like Inter is a better team. Well, good luck to them. Well, Inter in this case was not the better team because Napoli was the better team. So.
I think this year was very close because it was decided on the last game. And we in our chat group with our Italian friends, we had some bets, not bets, but we at the beginning of the season we said this team is going to win, and I don't think you even picked Naples to be under the first four.
Don't.
So
I was hoping they would get to the first four. I was hoping for them to get to the Champions League again because we've been. One thing about De Laurentiis that people forget is that beside last year, Napoli was the only team in Italy that had been in Europe for 14 years straight. The only team, So people yap about their team and how they did this and they did that, but nobody's paying attention to what De Laurentiis is doing. He's brought consistency. It's not like Napoli come from nothing. He's been building every year.
I actually disagree here. They came from nothing because...
I agree. They came from nothing in the sense that he took them from nothing.
Because De Laurentiis took the team when he became the owner. They were in Serie C.
Yes.
Yeah, so they came from the third league. Yes, from the third league, and he brought them back to Europe and winning the Scudetto twice. So
really fast. He went to Europe really fast.
Yes.
He became the Serie A. And then he started, it was most of the time Champions League. And again, it's, we're probably never going to win the Champions League. I never say never, but it's just fun to see Napoli compete with the top teams and it's just fun. But I know you got places to be.
Yeah.
Have fun,
okay.
Involved. Say Tanya, happy birthday to her. I know that she's probably
thank you
complaining about me being online. I'm too late.
Thank you.
But I wanted to do it yesterday, but I was too exhausted. I took a nap.
Okay.
And I just woke up at 3:30 in the morning. I just came back from New Jersey. I just want to come back early because I didn't want to be home at 9:00 at night. But thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Alfonso. That was great.
Fun. I will see you probably in September.
Thank you. We will.
Okay.
All right. Ciao.
Wow, that was a wild and vivid conversation. I can't believe how someone can get so emotional for the teams they cheer and root for. Now, I do understand this a little bit better.
Yeah. Calcio is very different than American football or even soccer. While in the US, you go see the game and enjoy beverages, extravagant food. In Italy, it's all about the team. They don't care about the hot dogs. So I think we had a really nice conversation. And again, thank you, Stefano. Thank you, Andrea and Alfonso. Okay, so we're at the end of this episode. And as usual, Tanya has some tips for us. Tips from Tanya.
Thanks, Davide. Well, I'm going to try to do my best to give you guys some tips about Calcio. I think it'll be a great activity for those visiting Italy and really wanting to dive into the culture. I mean, what better way to learn about Calcio than to attend a game? So what are some tips to make this happen? First tip is Italian Calcio is played between the months of mid-August through the end of May, with a short break during the Christmas holidays. So if you happen to visit Italy during that period and you are interested to go to a game, plan ahead. Now, the hardest part is getting tickets to a Calcio game given its popularity. And so the first thing to do is to go to the official website of the home team that plays the game and look for tickets there. Tickets usually to the public are sold 2 to 3 weeks before the game, and earlier sales are reserved for members of fan clubs or members of the association of the team. which sometimes you can become a member for about $50. So that gives you a better chance to buy tickets earlier and make sure you can get into a specific game. So if you're interested really in a specific game, consider becoming a member. The second tip is that you should only buy tickets at the official team website. Don't go through third parties, or even worse, don't show up at the stadium and scalp tickets because they might be fake. Also, do not buy tickets for the visitor sector. He will be there watching the game with the away team fans. So if you want to enjoy the game, just buy it anywhere but there. Unless, of course, you're rooting for the away team. Then go ahead and buy it for that section. The last tip is if you will have better chances to buy tickets for less significant games. A derby might be too big of a game and very hard to get tickets, so aim for a less significant game against a smaller team. The game will still be fun, and you still will leave with all the vibe. So, that's all I have for tips about Calcio. And, Davide, when are we going to go see a game?
Well, we have to wait now. The season just finished. And in the meantime, we can start to watch the Teams World Cup every night starting in June. Are you going to watch with me?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Well, come on.
We will see. But, thanks again. I really appreciate you bringing this important cultural topic to our listeners. And I hope everybody learned more about the most popular sport in the world. And let me know if you want to learn more about it by asking us questions on our Facebook group page, Experience Italy with Friends. We will see you again in 2 weeks. Ciao, everyone.
Ciao, ciao. And Calcio is live.
We hope you've enjoyed Experience Italy with Friends. If you like the podcast, remember to follow us and leave a review letting us know what you found to be the most helpful. And if you want expert advice or assistance in creating your own immersive and authentic experience in Italy, visit us at www.amicivacations.com.